I thought it was interesting that when Annika asks Belly and Taylor which of the boys is single,
By the way, which of these guys is single? Because I need to at least make out with somebody this weekend.
Belly replies with this.
Ethan. Blake is Jared's ex, and Redwood's got dibs.
She names the other boys who are single and even gives a brief explanation of their dating situation, but she notably leaves Conrad's name off that list, even though Conrad is technically single. Why leave Conrad out? I don't think it's an accident. Even if Belly won't say it out loud, and even if Belly won't admit it to herself, she still sees Conrad as hers in an unspoken way. It almost seems a little bit subconscious, like she doesn't want other people or other women to see him as available. What she's not saying here is a little bit louder, I think, than what she is saying. And also notice Belly's face when her friend Annika comments that Conrad is hot.
You guys never told me how hot Conrad is. I'd go for him if he wasn't Belly's first love. No, you should do it.
She looks a little bit uncomfortable. Annika says that she won't go for Conrad because he is Belly's first love. And Belly kind of makes a bit of an uncomfortable face, and she then sort of says, oh no, I totally think you should do it. But if you watch back kind of her reactions and her subtle gestures, she doesn't really want Annika to go for it, and she does seem pretty uncomfortable. In fact, I think when she is saying to Annika, oh, I think you should do it, it's almost like she's forcing herself to say it. It's almost like she's trying really hard to seem cool with it, hoping that they will, I guess, believe that she actually is cool with it. It's like she's not just trying to convince her friends, but she's also trying to maybe convince herself. Belly hasn't really had to grapple with the idea of seeing or witnessing Conrad with anyone else. He was extremely loyal to her during their relationship, and then after they broke up, he not only went to California, so even if he was kind of dating around, even casually, she wouldn't have seen it or heard about it, but he really didn't. That's kind of the impression that we get, is that he, didn't really get into any sort of serious relationship with anybody, so Belly hasn't had to deal with knowing that her first love, her ex that she's still in love with, has been with anybody else. She hasn't really had to deal with that jealousy aspect. So I imagine it's kind of uncomfortable for her to hear somebody, not just somebody, but one of her friends saying that Conrad is hot and kind of expressing interest in him. And she feels like she can't say no or lay a stake of claim over him, because then Taylor and Annika would kind of be like, what do you mean? I thought you were over him. So she can't say that, but we can see it in kind of her uncomfortability. And also in the fact that, as I mentioned in the opening of this video, she doesn't list Conrad on the list of single guys, even though he is technically single. We know at this point in season 3 that Belly's feelings for Conrad are a lot about what is unsaid with her rather than what is said, because she's not really being honest with herself. And when Belly looks away, Taylor even kind of softly, quietly says to Annika, don't do it, as in, don't go after Conrad. Because she knows that there would be some uncomfortability there, and I believe Taylor knows there's some feelings still there. I have a lot of thoughts on Taylor's whole role in this and in her denial of Belly's love for Conrad and in her kind of pushing Belly towards Jeremiah, and I think I'll save that for another video, but you kind of see it play out a little bit here. Taylor knows that Belly would not be okay with Annika going after Conrad. And isn't the most ironic part that Taylor knows Belly wouldn't be okay with anyone else going after Conrad, but they're okay joking around about how Taylor made out with Jeremiah in 7th grade. Yeah, it was 7th grade and it was a long time ago, but there's not this level of uncomfortability to that, but there is a level of uncomfortability to the idea of Annika hooking up with Conrad. It's obvious there's still this really strong tie between Belly and Conrad that Taylor is acknowledging here, and that Belly is in an unspoken way acknowledging, just not out loud. Also, Belly referring to her relationship with Conrad as ancient history was, in my opinion, her just trying to put some distance between her and her feelings with Conrad, making it sound like it was, the feelings happened so long ago, when there's been multiple instances in the past few days and weeks of Belly feeling her feelings for Conrad. There was the peach scene, the surfboard injury scene where Belly almost kissed Conrad, and I think if Conrad hadn't stopped her, she would have. So no, Belly, it's not ancient history, and it doesn't matter how much she tries to convince herself, it's just not going to change the way that she feels. And a part of this scene at the pool that I really wanted to point out, because I just thought it was sweet and it goes back to Conrad's yearning, is the way that he keeps glancing over at Belly and he kind of smiles softly to himself and then he looks down. I just felt bad for Conrad during this whole bachelorette party, and I thought he was being a really good sport and putting on a brave face and really trying to be a good brother and a good friend and going along with all of the fun, even though it was kind of killing him inside. So even though this was a quick, short scene and it seemed more about the fun of the pool party, I think it told us a lot, and it really revealed a lot about where Belly's head is at and her true feelings.
We need to prepare ourselves, because after all of this went down, he is going to take it back the next day. And I actually think that this is a good thing, and I want to explain why. So in this conversation, Conrad poured out his heart to Belly. He laid himself bare, as he's going to explain to her in the next day. He told her that he loved her finally, and he also said, be with me and don't marry Jeremiah. And then Belly went into self-defense mode. She put up her walls and she told Conrad that what he was doing was wrong, and essentially that she is picking Jeremiah and that Jeremiah loves her no matter what. And then she explained to him that Jeremiah doesn't just take away his love when things get hard. And the inconsistency of Conrad's love is really what Belly could not handle and what hurt her the most. And then of course she finished this with, you and I were never anything. I think it's just Belly really trying to defend herself, because essentially what Conrad is telling her right now is something that she has spent multiple years, over 4 years, in her mind telling her that him loving her is not a possibility. She has told herself time and time again that her and Conrad were never anything. So she is just relaying that to Conrad. And I think that he's going to be really moved by this line and be like, okay, if that's what she thinks, I'm going to take it back the next day so that her and Jeremiah can get married and Conrad can have a little bit of pride left so that he can be in their lives and be around them still and try to act like what he told Belly doesn't matter and that he didn't really mean it. Just really gonna piss Belly off because it's the one thing that she hates when he does. In the finale of season 2, remember in the motel, she said that Conrad just gives and takes away and she can't even blame him because that's just who he is. So I think episode 8 is going to pick up the next day and Conrad is going to have a conversation with Belly and take back what he said on the beach the night before. One reason why I really think this is going to happen is because the big conversations in the book have basically played out on the show word for word. And the main big reason why it is so important that he takes this back is because it makes Belly so mad. She gets mad at him all over again, just like she did the night before. Imagine if you were Belly and you're in this situation and you do not love him back. Which, first of all, I think that this conversation would have been completely different. Probably would not have acted this way and she would have been like, whoa, I don't feel the same. But okay, the next day, he's taking it back and you don't feel that way. Wouldn't you be like, oh, what a relief? She could be like, I'm really glad you don't actually feel that way and now I can get married to Jeremiah in peace. But no, she gets super mad. And you know what that does? Conrad realizes that Belly is acting this way because she cares about him and she still loves him. And then she calls him out for lying. And then he says, yeah, you're right. And he doubles down on actually being in love with Belly. So Belly gets confirmation that Conrad actually is in love with her, which I think the night before she was being this defensive because she didn't believe him. And now he's doubling down. And then Conrad gets confirmation that Belly's in love with him back. So he actually needs to take it back because then it's going to make him realize that she's in love with him. It's going to cause him to repeat himself and hopefully it will actually get through to Belly. As much as we really don't want him to take it back, it's going to do wonders for them and moving their plot forward.
I just need to make sure that everybody understands that the words Belly says to Conrad on the beach in episode 7 are all lies. Like, we're all on the same page there, right? Doesn't mean a single word she says. You and I were never anything. We know that's a lie. Jeremiah doesn't take his love away when things get hard. It's a lie. He literally cheated on her the minute things got hard. It is a desperate attempt to try and convince herself and Conrad that she is not in love with him, even though she so clearly is. An understandable reaction considering her situation. She has spent her entire life convincing herself that Conrad does not really love her. He's partially to blame for that when they were teenagers. But now, in his words, they are so clearly truthful and she is faced with having to accept that he does love her. It is too much for her to handle. It is too much for her to process. Even beyond that, the whole episode, she's lying. She's lying the whole episode. She opens the episode with 5 different lies, trying to come up with excuses about the wound cleaning scene. The only scene she's not lying is the bathroom with Taylor. That's it.
So I was actually super disappointed with the beach confession scene at first, and just hold on before you come for me. As a huge fan of the books, I just always reading it pictured Conrad's confession being like super chaotic. He's just sort of bursting at the seams with these words that he has to tell her because he just simply cannot take it anymore. And I pictured Belly so angry, like practically spitting her words angry. Just absolute chaos between them. Like the season 2 beach scene I thought you knew, but dialed up to like 11. But then I watched it again and I realized how much this choice makes sense. They are not 17 and 18-year-old drunk kids anymore. I mean, they're drunk, but they're adults. And this is something Conrad has wanted to say for years. It is so measured. It is purposeful. It is intentional. He means every single word he says, and he wants to make sure that that is clear, because that's the thing, right? She doesn't believe that he means it. She believes that he takes away his love, but that's not the truth. His love has always been there. There have just been things that have been keeping him from being able to express it properly, so he doesn't want to mess it up this time, and he needs her to believe it. And so this choice, this subdued delivery, works also because it unnerves Belly in a way that a chaotic confession never could, because of its sincerity, right? And it's still beautifully heartbreaking. It's guttural. And Chris makes some really beautiful acting choices here with voice breaks and when he chooses to break down in tears. I know a lot of people wanted him to claw harder at his heart, but I just think that risked feeling overacted where this feels real and authentic. And I think Belly holding her composure and clearly being hurt and feeling a million things at once, but holding it together shows her growth as well. It's just a stark juxtaposition from their last time when they were on the beach together, and I think it's actually perfect. So yeah, I have seen some people feeling like they were disappointed, like this didn't deliver, but if you think about it in the grand scheme of things, this storytelling wise is perfect, and the acting choices are actually wonderful.
It took me a while to fully grasp the fact that Belly is an unreliable narrator and that her narration and the flashbacks are not necessarily telling us the true story. I absolutely loved episode 4 of season 2 because both of the flashbacks that we got showed us just truly how unreliable Belly can be. And especially during this exact time in Belly's life, she's trying to convince herself that Conrad doesn't like her and that starting something with Jeremiah is a good idea. And the narration in her flashbacks really supports that new mentality that she has. So Belly told us in this scene that this was the first time she's ever had her heart broken, and she was so excited to go to the boardwalk with Conrad. It was everything that she's ever wanted, but then she gets really disappointed because he's actually there to see Angie. So I think what we're supposed to take from this scene from Belly's point of view is that her heart is broken because she went there with Conrad. She thought that Conrad wanted to be there and hang out with Belly, but he was actually there to hang out with Angie and talk to and flirt with her, and kind of conclude that Conrad doesn't actually like her in the same way that she likes him, and that he doesn't see her in a romantic way. But now we have to take a closer look at what is actually being shown in the scene. Here we see Conrad upset that Belly never came back to the ring toss. To me, he genuinely seems disappointed and kind of upset that Belly ditched him. He tells her that he got her this prize, and Angie said that it was the best one that they had. And he specifically thought that Belly might like it, which shows that Conrad is being very thoughtful towards Belly. In the show, we don't have any confirmation specifically yet if he actually went to the boardwalk because he wanted to talk to or flirt with Angie. Without that confirmation, we really have to take Belly's narration with a grain of salt because, in my eyes, Conrad is upset that Belly left him because he actually did want to spend time with Belly at the boardwalk. He might have had a crush on Angie too, but we've seen in other flashbacks that Belly and Conrad are really good friends and that Conrad cares about Belly. So he definitely doesn't like disappointing her, and that contributed to him feeling really bad that she left him. What we're ultimately supposed to get from this scene is that Belly was heartbroken because Conrad left her and doesn't like her. But what we saw from the scene is that Conrad was genuinely upset that Belly ditched him too. Now let's look at the other flashback that we got in this episode when Belly was homesick with a summer cold. Just out of Belly's earshot, we see Susanna and Jeremiah having a conversation where she is pretty much insisting that he needs to stay home and keep Belly company. Jeremiah had other plans to go to the boardwalk with his friend, so he didn't want to stay home with Belly, but Susanna pretty much begged him. Jeremiah ultimately agreed to stay with Belly and had such a good time that he stayed with her, and he got sick 2 days later. Belly is trying to convince us and herself that Jeremiah has always been there for her when she needs him. But as the audience, we have the advantage of seeing that Susanna practically made him stay. And I think this is really interesting when you piece together other bits of information that we've gotten from the show. Like in this scene when Susanna tells Conrad that he was the only one that would ever let Belly hang out with the boys and tag along. And we've even seen other flashbacks with Belly around this age where she's spending time with Conrad while Jeremiah is in the back ignoring her. So I kind of think that the reason why Jeremiah stayed for 2 days is because he realized that him and Belly get along so well, and this is like the beginning of their best friendship. Know that Belly has always been interested in spending time with all of the boys. Now she's finally bonding and becoming better friends with Jeremiah. It makes sense why she would want to stay with him to continue doing that while he was sick. I would be remiss not to touch on this little moment where their hands touch. This probably did happen, but Belly is just romanticizing it and making it seem like it was this big sweet moment. But the cold hard truth is that we just saw this flashback. It's the exact same summer. She's pretty much wearing the same outfit. And here she basically admitted that being at the boardwalk with Conrad was everything that she's ever wanted. So while Belly and Jeremiah were definitely building their friendship this summer, we know for a fact that she was romantically interested and in love with Conrad. Also extremely telling that Jeremiah says he can remember the exact moment when everything changed and he started to have feelings for Belly, and that was the summer that she turned 16, and in the flashback, Belly was 13. Also in season 1, when Jeremiah confessed that he had feelings for Belly, this was her reaction. She said, "Really?" And look at that face. She's so confused. So ultimately, in this flashback, Belly is trying to convince us and herself that Jeremiah has always been there for her when she needs him, possibly that they've liked each other for a long time and that they have a history together, when in reality, that is actually what's going on with Conrad. She's just in the middle of the process of convincing herself to move on from Conrad and that he never actually loved her to justify moving on with Jeremiah. The problem with this show is that they show us everything out of order, and it's our job to put the pieces of the puzzle together to make sense of the timeline and actually figure out what's going on.
Jeremiah knows that Conrad could take his girl anytime he wants. Jeremiah spends this entire episode side-eyeing Belly and Conrad and taking note of all of their interactions and conversations. It's obvious that he's really insecure anytime Belly and Conrad interact, and you could say he has good reason to be, but it is interesting to watch him acknowledge that there's something between Conrad and Belly, even if he's not saying it out loud, when Belly herself won't even acknowledge it.
And you looked after my girl all summer too?
Jeremiah makes this comment to Conrad about how he's been taking care of his girl all summer, and he's not really actually thanking Conrad. He seems to be more making Conrad aware that it's been on his mind that Conrad and Belly spent a lot of time alone together in the summer house this summer. When he thanks Conrad, he glances over at Conrad to almost assess his facial expression, and he does that each time he makes these little comments to Conrad. We're going to point it out throughout this video.
I think that was one of our hurricane bases.
Well, these are being used, right?
Jeremiah then walks in on Belly and Conrad talking about how somebody broke their hurricane vases. And the look on Jeremiah's face when he walks in on them just talking makes it seem like he walked in on them doing something far worse. Because his expression looks like he caught them red-handed in the act when they were just talking in the kitchen. Why would Jeremiah be so worried about them just talking in the kitchen if he was secure in his relationship with Belly and if he was secure with Belly being around Conrad? When Conrad offers to clean up the broken vase and Belly says, "It's okay, Jeremiah, and I will do it," Jeremiah again glances over at Conrad to assess his facial expression and see how he's reacting.
No, it's okay. Jeremiah and I can do it.
He's just so in tune with Conrad when you'd think he would be focused more on his bachelor weekend and hanging out with his friends and Belly, but he just seems immensely focused on Conrad and Conrad's reactions to what Belly's doing. After a few of these instances of Jeremiah either walking in on Belly and Conrad talking or Jeremiah looking over at Belly and Conrad interacting with each other, Jeremiah goes to talk to Belly in her room while she's getting ready for their night out and tells her that he hasn't seen her very much, he misses her, he wants some time with her. He seems like he's just in this really insecure state of mind and he's trying to prove something to himself or make up for something.
Missed you all day.
I've been right here.
Yeah, with Taylor and Annika.
Okay, you've been hanging out with your bros all day.
I just feel like I haven't seen you in so long. We haven't had any time alone. Give me a kiss.
I better. I have to finish doing my hair.
And when he's trying to initiate physical intimacy with Belly and she doesn't initially seem very into it, he seems to really kind of be pushing for it. And again, for me, it didn't seem like it was coming from a place of desiring closeness in that moment, but more of a place of insecurity and, like I said, trying to prove something. I think Jeremiah actually being around Belly and Conrad and seeing them interact is really driving a lot of Jeremiah's insecurities, because even though he's known that they've spent quite a bit of alone time together in the house this summer, he wasn't there to see it. It was really fascinating to me to notice how Belly kind of initially tries to resist a little bit and then gives in, which, as I've mentioned in a lot of my past videos, seems to be a pattern with Belly. It seems like she just wants to make Jeremiah happy and she really struggles to say no to him. It's like she's worried about what his reaction will be if she doesn't give in and say yes to him. So then when they're all on their night out on the town and Belly kind of comes to the realization that it was Conrad who convinced Laurel to come to her bridal shower and ultimately come to her wedding, Belly decides she wants to talk to Conrad about it and confirm her suspicions. And when she pulls Conrad aside on the street just to have a conversation with him, again, Jeremiah looks back with this very suspicious look on his face. If they're just having a conversation and Jeremiah is secure in their relationship and feels safe in their relationship, why is he assessing them like this? Why would them simply talking bother him so much? Why would Belly pulling Conrad aside for a quick chat be something that Jeremiah seems really wary of? Now, it's obvious that we all know that Jeremiah is insecure because he knows that Belly and Conrad liked each other for basically their entire lives. He knows that they had this intense relationship 4 years ago and that their breakup was very difficult on both of them. So we know he's not secure in his relationship with Belly. That's not news, but it's really interesting to watch it play out and watch him be days away from marrying her, but still be holding on to all of these insecurities, but yet also insisting that him and Belly are right for each other. If they're so right for each other, Wouldn't he be sure that there's nothing between Belly and Conrad anymore? Wouldn't he feel secure enough for them to just be having conversations? I mean, they've known each other their whole lives, and not have it be something that really bothers him or something he's constantly, literally looking over his shoulder for? So at this point in the night, it seems like Jeremiah's insecurities have reached a breaking point, and he decides to talk to Conrad at one of the bars that they're in.
Belly and I, we're gonna take care of each other now. We're getting married. She's my family. You get that, right?
Now tell me, am I the only one who found this conversation really uncomfortable to witness? Jeremiah tells Conrad that he's thankful for him looking out for him all of these years. And again, it doesn't sound like he's very sincere in saying that. The way he's saying it, you can tell that he has ulterior motives. So he tells him that he's thankful, but that now Jeremiah and Belly will be taking care of each other from here on out. He says, "She's my family. You get that, right?" And it's said in this really intense and threatening manner that, like I said, made me really uncomfortable. It felt like Jeremiah was marking his territory and staking his claim over Belly. And I know some people will say that it's totally fine for him to do that because Belly is his fiancée and they're getting married and they should be taking care of each other. But to that I would say you might be forgetting their history and some of the other things that are at play here. As we know, Belly and Conrad have known each other their whole lives. They were childhood friends and they then had a relationship that was very intense. So it's not the same dynamic as any other brother-in-law and sister-in-law who don't have that history. And I think it's obvious that Jeremiah's insecurities come from the fact that he knows that Belly and Conrad always had feelings for each other, and he knows that the relationship was very intense. And I believe he knows that when he started his relationship with Belly, Belly was not over Conrad. I think he knows Belly still isn't over Conrad, even though she's not acknowledging it to herself. I believe Jeremiah knows that he kind of manipulated his way into this relationship with Belly, and I am planning to do a whole separate video on that. Some might disagree with me, but again, that's just based on my own observations throughout the 3 seasons so far. And because of that, I don't feel like Jeremiah feels like he's on very steady ground in this relationship with Belly. He wouldn't need to essentially threaten Conrad to stay away if he did. If he felt there was nothing between Belly and Conrad anymore and that Conrad didn't hold any power or influence over Belly anymore, none of this would even be happening. He wouldn't be looking over his shoulder the entire episode. He wouldn't be sneaking these little glances at them while they're talking. And he wouldn't need to pull Conrad aside to essentially tell him, please back off. Jeremiah knows that as long as Conrad is around Belly, there's a chance that that spark between them is going to reignite. And it really makes me wonder, why did he ever start a relationship with Belly when he knew this was an ever-present factor? And the funny thing is, in season 3, episode 5, the episode with the peach scene, I kind of had a feeling that when Jeremiah arrived at the summer house in the famous "honey, I'm home" moment, I had a feeling that the same thing was happening, that he was kind of sneaking these glances at Conrad, assessing how their interactions were, kind of giving him these really suspicious looks, pulling Belly in to stake his claim again. And at the time I thought, if I call this out, people are going to say I'm reaching. But given the events of episode 7, I want to reach back and pull that footage and those stills and look at them now.
Oh, so I told you I'd take in Michael's tomorrow.
Oh, that's cool. Conrad took me, and we used the coupons.
Wow, man.
When he arrives home, he's cuddling up to Belly and he's being all touchy-feely to her, but the entire time he's watching Conrad. He's looking at Conrad while he's hugging and loving up on Belly. If he was really in the moment with Belly, why would he be doing that? If he was doing that solely for the purpose of giving Belly affection, why would he be doing that? Then when he realizes that they went to Michael's together, which we all know Conrad didn't have ulterior motives with that. He wasn't trying to steal her heart at Michael's. He was just trying to help her out, and if anything, he didn't actually want to go with her because he knew it would be better if he stays away. But when Jeremiah realizes that they took that trip to Michael's, look at the look that he gives Conrad. So like I said, I think Jeremiah knows that Conrad could take his girl anytime he wanted, if he wanted. And for me, it's just proof that he knows he's not the right one for Belly deep down inside, and it's just proof that he knows he got into a relationship with Belly in a bit of a sneaky way. It's proof that he knows he interjected himself in a situation that he shouldn't have. Because if none of this was true, I don't think he'd be as insecure as he is, and I don't think he'd be watching them like a hawk. It kind of seems like deep down even Jeremiah knows that Belly is Team Conrad, and he's just trying to prevent her from realizing it.
I am so sorry, but you cannot convince me to be Team Conrad.
I'm not making this video to convince you. And I don't really want to convince you. You can prefer Jeremiah, or you can prefer no one. But I am a Virgo, and so many things sat wrong with me in this video that I had to say something. First of all, of course Jeremiah's for the wedding. Of course he is. There are reasons you get married other than love, unfortunately. And his main reason is just wanting her to be his. Also, he was never the one making money for the wedding. I mean, right now, Adam paid for it. Adam paid for everything. But before that, Belly was the one making the money. Jeremiah was doing an internship. He may be all for the wedding, but he hasn't helped at all. Belly literally started crying because she felt like she was doing it alone. But speaking of the job with his dad, Belly literally gave up a lifelong dream of hers so that she could stay with Jeremiah, so they would not have to be separated right after they got married. She also doesn't love that he's working at Breaker. She doesn't like that it's taking up all of his time. Because like I said, she was like alone in wedding planning before his dad came over and took over everything. And yet, he's thinking about taking a full-time position to work with his dad and finishing classes online. His dad's company is in Boston. Do you know what's not in Boston? Bellingier's school that she has a whole other year of. A whole year she would now have to spend away from her new husband. And oh yeah, he hasn't mentioned this to her yet. And they're getting married in 2 days? So is he going to tell her in that time, or is he going to wait until they're legally tied together? And yes, I know they're not actually getting married, but that's not the point. Also, don't really have a problem with Belly and Jer getting drunk at their bachelor and bachelorette parties. I think that's fine. But it was important for Belly to meet with him after it was over. Wanted to meet him on the beach, and she was able to get out to the beach. She did drink. She did get a little drunk, and she got a little high. But she was able to stand upright and go to the beach. He was vomiting all over the place and couldn't walk straight. So while like a few shots would have been cool, you know, he could have toned it down. Could have remembered that his fiance wanted to spend time with him. Especially when hours earlier, he was complaining that she had spent too much time with Annika and Taylor. When they're the ones who came in town, especially for her and her bachelor party and her wedding. And he was also hanging out with his friends. So he says that and then doesn't go and meet her on the beach. And it's just so wild to me that it's claimed that he never joked about Cabo after it happened. And I guess you can say that he specifically never joked about it, but he didn't have a problem with his friends laughing about how loud Lacey was being in their room, how Jeremiah locked his friends out of their room. He was just sitting there and listening to them say that loud enough for the whole bar to hear, for his brother to hear, when he could have been like, you know, guys, stop, you know, I made a mistake. That really hurt Belly. We shouldn't joke about it. Wait. Did you say Conrad was the one who didn't give her the time of day before she turned pretty? Because it seems like by his own admission that was Jeremiah. I know what Jeremiah fans are going to say. There's that one time he stayed home with her when she was sick. Because Susanna told him to. Meanwhile, there are like countless examples of Conrad paying attention to her over the years. We're still getting examples of it. He paid her no mind? Like, really? Little nerdy ass loved the concept of infinity, so he taught her about it and remembered it all those years later and got her a necklace. And yes, I know, didn't handle the whole giving her the necklace thing well. He didn't give it to her on her birthday because he was embarrassed. And he was embarrassed because he liked her and he didn't want to seem like too sappy or vulnerable in front of everyone else. Because he was raised to have that kind of complex. He gave her her favorite muffin when Steven and Jeremiah were tossing it around and trying to keep it from her. He volunteered to teach her how to dance when she actually asked Steven, not him. And Jer is mad that Conrad left the game. And then we have Junior Mint. Belly was all excited that he took her to the boardwalk, just the two of them. Later on, she thinks it's because he likes the ring toss girl. You cannot convince me that he actually liked the ring toss girl. Look at his face. He was devastated when she ditched him at the ring toss and when she said she would have preferred the giraffe. And this was 2 or 3 summers before she turned pretty. He has always paid attention to her. Not to mention, when she showed up after turning pretty, Jeremiah was the one who noticed her conventionally attractiveness. I will say what Conrad says, probably not what a girl wants to hear, and we all know Conrad has a communication problem, but he says, I liked you better with glasses, because he's always noticed her. He doesn't want her to be someone she's not. I mean, even in the first episode, he was like, don't let my mom use you as a doll. He has always looked out for her, as she said. And in terms of Conrad being a little bitch and not going back to California, need I remind you that he was going to? Had gotten another job. He was heading there. And then he heard her crying. He stayed because he wanted to make her happy. He stayed and told Jeremiah that he would be his best man. Before I hear any Conrad haters say that he's ruining his career by staying. No, he's not. It's not like he's in his last year of med school. It's not like he's about to graduate and start an internship. He just finished his first year. His advisor literally said most first years don't do anything the first summer they have off. So he does have a choice to stay or not. He's not being a bum by not going back. Conrad's in medical school. Jeremiah literally said he doesn't know what to do with his life. And yeah, I will admit, he probably needed to be at that internship to gain some of his dad's trust, even though his dad is a supreme asshole. But there were times where he could have left. He basically ditched Belly the whole summer. And when Belly and Conrad were in a relationship, as teenagers, Conrad didn't handle things well. He pushed her away because he felt like he couldn't give his all to a relationship. He felt he couldn't give her the relationship that she deserved because he wasn't good with himself. And to be honest, I think that's a valid reason. The problem is he should have communicated that to her himself. He should have been open and honest with his feelings. But while they were in a relationship, he was never malicious. He got withdrawn, but all of his intent was good. He didn't treat her badly on purpose. I just want to point that out because you were using the same excuses for Jeremiah when Jeremiah treated Belly badly by cheating on her. You said those things happen when you're in a relationship. So does miscommunication when you're a teenager. Like I said, Conrad didn't handle it well. He should have told all the feelings he was having to her. But do you think about why he did what he did? Why did Jared do what he did? Because I don't think there's any reason for that. And the reason Belly forgave Jeremiah and still hangs on to what Conrad did is because she cares about Conrad more. Conrad did hurt her more because she loves him more. And she always had higher expectations for Conrad. She got that from Susanna. Belly and Susanna always placed Conrad on a pedestal. For Belly, he was so built up in her head that when he made a mistake, there was like no coming back from it for him. And it hurt her so much because she loved him so much. Meanwhile, Jeremiah makes a mistake and she can forgive him because she never had any expectations for him. Remember when Belly said she doesn't think her mom would have cared if her dad cheated? Same thing. Same thing. And this actually was Jeremiah being jealous and insecure because at this point, Conrad hadn't done anything. He hadn't done anything to warrant this kind of treatment. He hadn't crossed any boundaries yet. He was fixing things around the house for them. He was happily participating in his best man duties in that stupid little dance. So yeah, Jeremiah having this reaction at that point is a little nuts. And yeah, beach scene, him saying that now, it is selfish. No Conrad fan I know says it's not selfish. That's like the one selfish thing he's done this season. Jeremiah is consistently selfish. I know Conrad, big selfish that was. I can't really defend the choice, but I also kind of understand why he did it. I also understand what Belly said. I mean, she is flat out lying when she says, you and I weren't anything. Come on, girl. You may have only been together a few months, but you're still thinking about that love 4 years later when you're about to get married. Belly does have every right to be mad, though. But this is the catalyst for her to face certain huge decisions. Like I said, I don't expect to convince anyone to be Team Conrad. But the video was like low-key killing me with the misinformation. Jared may have been there for her, but the foundation of their relationship, physical attraction and trauma bonding, and they're letting history outweigh compatibility.